Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
What is going on, CaneSport? Izubee Charles, joined by Matt Shodell for Good Morning CaneSport. It is January 2nd, 2024. Happy New Year to everyone. Matt, New Year's is here. What is your New Year's resolution to start the show off, right?
Well, I do have a New Year's resolution. I don't know if you want me to share it with everybody. It's not good for Good Morning CaneSport. It's actually to talk less and listen more. That's actually my New Year's resolution.
I like that.
I'm going to stop talking now for the rest of the show.
All righty. Well, with that being said, it's been a great show. Have a great New Year. Just kidding.
I'm not even kidding. That was my New Year's resolution. That's for real. That's not a joke. I talk too much.
No, I think the fans love you, Matt. So we got to keep you on a strong.
What's yours?
Mine? That's a good question. I haven't thought about that yet. Maybe tomorrow on the 3rd I'll have a solid New Year's resolution. But for now, a ton of Miami Hurricanes news. As we all know, Cam Ward decided to go to the NFL draft, and Miami is still in search of a quarterback. Will Howard's still on the market. KJ Jefferson recently committed to UCF yesterday. So Miami's looking for their guy under center. We saw how Jakari played in that bowl game. He did well, but still question marks there. Another guy on the market that Miami is looking at is Malachi Nelson. Matt, you kind of took a look at that and him as a player. Just what are your thoughts on kind of Miami's quarterback search right now and Malachi Nelson being a potential guy to land in Coral Gables?
Yeah, well, let's start with Cam Ward because, I spoke to both his parents yesterday. And, it's interesting because there's this dichotomy between what the fans think they know based on message boards and Twitter know-it-alls, AKA Gary Furman. But no, Twitter know-it-alls. If you actually talk, and I had spoken several times with Cam's dad, who's a really nice guy, and they sort of wanted to go radio silent for a while, which is understandable. They were trying to make a very difficult decision, and actually they were leaving it up to their son to make it. But what I found interesting is, Miami, oftentimes, if you only talk, not even Miami, but you talk to any school, right? They generally think they're getting a lot of players that they may or may not get because, a lot of people aren't going to say to somebody, I'm not interested in you, or I like someone else better. They're going to say, yeah, of course, we love you. We really want to go there, whatever. Everyone does that. That's just what they do. And so, the parents, talking to them, they didn't necessarily get the sense that Miami was confident they were going to get Cameron, but Miami coaches knew that Cameron loved Miami, that both parents trusted Mario Cristobal, as did Cameron explicitly. But what I found interesting, as they really opened up, and I talked to them for about an hour yesterday, as they really opened up about their whole process and what went on, because they want Miami fans to understand. They don't want Miami fans to hate Cameron Ward. Okay, nobody wants an entire fan base to hate their son. And Cameron was not going about this trying to hurt any particular program. And what both parents want Miami fans to understand is that unlike what these Twitter people and message board people were saying, Cameron from day one was planning to go pro, but wanted to weigh out his college option. And Miami made it a really tough choice because, Cameron felt fairly sure that he would go between the 2nd and 4th rounds. Where are you going, Izubee? Are you going to leave the screen entirely?
No, this is such a good story. I'm gearing up for it.
Oh, yeah, right. You're going to fall asleep. So Cameron felt fairly confident, after talking to some people, he'd be going between the 2nd and 4th rounds. So really the question became, do you want to start your NFL contract this year, right? A year earlier, because once you get past that 3rd year, the family's well aware of this. They're very good friends with the former agents. So they know all the ins and outs, and he actually worked for them for free, believe it or not, in this whole deal. But they wanted to be sure that, A, he was going to be drafted in a decent round. B, start that NFL contract early, because after you get to the 2nd contract, you get some serious money, right? The first contract, 3rd round, maybe $6 million over 3 years, which still averages out to $2 million a year, which is more than what he would get in NIL in year one, or the only year at Miami in year one. But with that said, maybe he could have squeaked into the 1st round. So that's really what they had to make a decision on. Could he be a 1st rounder? And they said the Rutgers game had nothing to do with it. I found it very interesting that they had planned to announce at Christmas and then put it off until after the Rutgers game, right?
Yeah.
But if you watch that Rutgers game and you think, can my son become a 1st rounder in that offense that I saw, You're probably thinking not so much. They insist that's not the case. That's Matt Shodell saying that. They insist the Rutgers game had zero to do with it. But I found it interesting they put the decision off, because they knew by Christmas they had an idea what rounds Cameron was going to go. And there's no new information out there. And their general thought is that from the people they've talked to, the agent, I guess, has sources of the NFL, whatever. The general thought is that Cameron actually has more upside being projected second to fourth round. He has more likelihood to go in the second round or the third round than the fourth round because apparently the feeling is that a lot of NFL scouts aren't as familiar with Cameron because he wasn't playing at an Ohio State or an Alabama or even a Miami. He's playing at Washington State, right? So he thinks now that he's in the draft, they actually will get a better look at what he can do, his upside as an NFL player. And they think that once he interviews very well, he's extremely bright. He was top of his class in high school, extremely bright, picks up X's and O's extremely quickly. So they think he will wind up most likely as a third rounder, maybe even a second rounder. So now you juxtapose that with the risk of going to a Miami offense that has struggled for 2 years, that has questionable receivers with Jacoby George not looking good, obviously, with Colby Young leaving for Georgia. What do you have right now at receiver? You have Xavier Restrepo, no tight ends that can catch the ball. If it was your son, would you say, I think, son, you should go to Miami and hopefully you'll be a first rounder instead of a second or third rounder? I mean, that's the choice that it came down to. And they also disputed this notion, which I think, I think Miami believed it was between them and the pros, but, they insisted Florida State was in it until the end. And, DJ, to Florida State, that was still on hold, right? Because they were still holding out on Cam also. So that makes sense to me a little bit. And, they weren't looking for, they said the Miami NIL money didn't change throughout the process. Like fans were saying, oh, they want more money. They're holding out for more money. That didn't change. Like that had, to them, that didn't have a lot to do with it. They said they picked Washington State when he came out of Incarnate Ward. They said Washington State, they had offers of triple the NIL money than they got at Washington State. And but Cameron felt comfortable at Washington State, and they felt that was this program that would really exhibit, that offense would exhibit his talents the best. And that was a smart decision. So it's a family that does take its time, that does make thoughtful decisions. And Miami fans might hate him and might hate them, but I don't. I blame NIL. I blame the current state of college football, the transfer portal, because, Miami's in this position because of the transfer portal. I mean, you don't, Tyler Van Dyke's gone. And yeah, Miami fans didn't want him back. But who Miami winds up with now, I don't know that he'll be better or worse than Tyler Van Dyke, who has his head on straight. You mentioned, and I don't want to talk too long, but you mentioned Malachi Nelson, for instance, right? Malachi Nelson is a former 5-star recruit who wound up a third-teamer at USC this year. And part of that was because he had a shoulder injury when he first arrived in the spring and just never really was able to move up the depth chart beyond the third team. And so now he's in the transfer portal, but he's a redshirt freshman. He's never played, gotten college experience, major college experience. And so that's a question mark. If I'm Miami, if they take him, I think they're sort of desperate at that point, Yeah. But KJ is off the board to UCF, I mean, what I'm trying to say is there's very few options other than new quarterbacks going into the portal, or you have to wait till the second portal window, but then they're not here in the spring. And that's somewhat of a disaster because you have an Emory Williams who's going to be coming off an injury and may or may not practice all spring. You maybe have Jakari. To me, I think Jakari will be here in the spring, but I think he may transfer after the spring, depending on what happens, because right now he might be their starting quarterback next year, right? I mean, you don't know. If they don't get a top portal quarterback, if I'm Jakari Brown, why not stay? So who knows what'll happen with that? This whole situation may have actually helped Miami keep Jakari, who has a very bright future if he can just maybe hone in a little bit more on his just in general and his accuracy. Because I know some Miami fans think he played great in the bowl game, but if you look closely, I mean, there was some easy throws that he just didn't put right on the money where a receiver can actually run after the catch, which is somewhat important in college football. And so we'll see. It's to be determined. Some people are hoping for a miracle with baby Tua, who it looks like I think is going to go pro, right? But he'd have to apply for a waiver to even come back because he played 5 games as a freshman at Alabama and not 4. So it's a little bit of a mess right now, and I don't know who you blame. I don't blame Cameron Ward. I blame the whole system. I just wish that players, why have a transfer portal window? Why can't you just transfer whenever? I mean, who are these people in the NCAA that you can only transfer right before a bowl game to screw up your team for the bowl game, but then right after the bowl games, you can't transfer anymore? I mean, who makes these rules? It's insanity, man. Like, if transfers could happen all year round, every day, I wouldn't even be worried about Miami's situation. But with the window closing, you need to get a guy. So now it's like crunch pressure, and Mario waiting for the guy he wanted, who he thought or hoped he was going to get. Didn't pan out. And now, it's on a little bit of a scramble. It's not a great situation.
Yeah, with the dominoes starting to fall, you see kind of we knew from the beginning Miami's going to swing big and try to land that top guy. And like you mentioned, DJU went to Florida State, KJ Jefferson now to UCF, so it's kind of leaving Miami scrambling. And kind of talking about the Jakari Brown situation. I watched the game. I did a story on how he performed. Like you said, he did good, but I don't think it was all right. This is our guy next year. We're locking him with Jakari Brown. Honestly, I feel like that's going to be a really, really interesting situation. We're going to see play out over the next few months and headed into the spring. But Miami swung big for Cam Ward and missed out. It looks like Will Howard's headed to Ohio State, so kind of leaving Miami in a desperate situation here, which is going to be really, really interesting to see. Malachi Nelson, like we mentioned, a guy that I watched during the 7-on-7 circuit last year and watched him in Miami play St. Thomas Aquinas. He's a good quarterback, but that's not the home run hit that Miami wanted to land. So we're going to see how that plays out in the next couple of months. It's going to be really interesting. Another story that we have on site today, New Year's here. We have 5 headlines that Miami fans want to see in 2024, as well as the top 10 players that we need to step up next year. Matt, just off the top of your head, who are some guys that you think, need to make that big step next year? Obviously, we saw a couple glimpses of the 2023 class, and we're going to have some, big prospects coming in that 2024 class as well. So just without spoiling too much, who's a guy or two that you think needs to step up in a big way for Miami to be successful?
Yeah, sure. I mean, off the top of my head, for Miami to be successful, everybody has to step up. Next question.
All right.
Okay. Well, a couple of guys that need to step up. I mean, they need somebody at tight end to step up. Riley Williams or Elijah Arroyo. Like, it's not rocket science. You need a guy like Ray Joseph, even on returns, to just be explosive. You need an offensive lineman, Matthew McCoy. I mean, you know the positions, defensive tackle, right? CJ Clark. You know the positions that need help. It's not rocket science. Like, I'm not sitting here telling people anything they don't know. And, I was telling someone at New Year's, it's funny to me because fans think that we're the experts. And I certainly am an expert, but Gary's not. So you have to really pick and choose who you listen to. No, none of us are experts. Like, yes, I happened to predict that Miami would win, I think, 8 games this year. And I predicted they'd win 7 or 8 games last year. And then I changed it from 8 to 10 after they went 4-0,
Bought in.
Yeah. So, we sort of, as reporters, we go with the flow. And it's never as bad as it seems. It's never as good as it seems. I always say that because it's true. And you even see it in the NFL. A team that plays great one week, I always say to people, they're probably not going to play as well next week. They tend to relax. They tend to party like a Izubee every day of the week after the win, big win, we're the best, Whereas teams that lose, they just have a different mentality. And if somebody could bottle being a loser like this, if I could bottle this and sell it to, NFL teams and college football teams, these players need to understand they're not good. Like, this is why coaches yell at players and tell players they're awful, because it lights a fire under them. If you tell someone how good they are, like Mario Cristobal, his biggest fear, I don't think he would ever say this out loud, his biggest fear is his players thinking they're good. And that's fair. That's fair, because when players start thinking they're good, they rest on their laurels, to use a term you wouldn't know what it means, because from the 1920s when Gary was born. And like, that's not going to get it done. Teams that are angry, this is why I always say 3 stars with huge upside are fine with me, because those guys know how hard work looks. They know that people are doubting them. It's when everyone tells you how great you are that you tend to press or not do well. And then once you've had success, everyone's telling you how great you are. If you don't do well, it really gets in your brain. I mean, Tyler Van Dyke is a perfect example. His first year, he came off the bench. There was no expectations of him whatsoever, and he was great. And then all of a sudden the expectations are ratcheted up and he has a bad game and he becomes a head case. And that's just a microcosm of the athlete today. There's very few athletes, and I think pros learn it, but college student athletes have a harder time with it. Learning how to deal with adversity and learning how to deal with outside noise and learning to embrace people hating you. the players that embrace people hating them and thrive on it, that do better at away games than at home games, those are the guys that I want on my team, you know? So Miami has to, as much as we can list 10 players of this or predict this or predict that, and as much as you want to listen to these other reporters who claim that they know how good or bad Miami is, Miami's not as bad as the message boards make them seem. They're going to win 9 or 10 games next year. That's my prediction. I predicted 8 wins last year and 8 wins this year. And if you add up both years, they were almost at 16. And next year I'm predicting 10 wins. Right now I'm going to sit here and predict 10 wins. With that said, I know nothing. I don't know more than you, who is now watching me spew nonsense out there in the YouTube verse or JW Player verse, depending what platform you're watching this on. But I do believe in my heart of hearts they'll win 10 games next year. I do believe in my heart of hearts they will have a quarterback not named Jakari Brown and not named Emory Williams that will be their starter next year. Not that there's anything wrong with Emory or Jakari, but I don't think either of them will be ready to be an elite quarterback next year. And for those who think that Jakari played great in the bowl game, fine. I'm not going to argue with you about it. But I would ask you, do you think he played at an elite championship level? And I think to a person, no matter how big a fan of Jakari you are, I think you would argue that no, he did not play at an elite championship level. Now, can he reach that? Sure. People took me to task because I said that people around the program that I've talked to say he's an NFL wide receiver. They think I'm saying that. That's not me saying that. I think Jakari can be an outstanding college quarterback because as you look around college, you can see plenty of really mobile quarterbacks like Jakari who don't have great accuracy, but a system is built around them where they can succeed even with some limitations in their accuracy. So I think Jakari can be an outstanding quarterback, but do I think he'll be at an elite championship level next year based on what I saw in the bowl game? No. Could he become that? Maybe. Yes. But remember, what we saw in the bowl game, those same guys are going to be playing in a game 9 months from now. They'll be in fall practice 8 months from now. They'll be in spring practice 4 months from now. What we saw in the bowl game, how big a jump do you expect from every one of those players in 9 months? Based on my history of covering this team, I don't expect a huge jump, but I do think that with some portal pieces that they can still get, and with the schedule that they have next year, that they should out-talent most of the teams they play. Maybe not a couple, but most of the others, they will out-talent them. So then it comes down to coaching and just, somebody was joking with me, the Jim Harbaugh thing, right? Where Jim Harbaugh was obviously suspended. Wasn't able to go to the games, and somebody was joking with me that, if only that happened in Miami and Mario wasn't allowed to go to some of the games, they would have won so many more games this year. And I'm like, yeah, that's really funny, dude. So I don't know that Miami fans think that's funny, but that's the perception right now of Mario, and Mario has to turn that around. And I don't know if that means just carte blanche, letting the coordinators do time management or what, but even in the bowl game, I had issues at the end of the game with not leaving more time on the clock for Miami at the end. So, there are some things here and there that I just don't understand. But it happens in the NFL too. There was an NFL game I was watching the other day where there was what game was it? There was a game where it came down to the last 20 seconds. The team had one timeout left, and they had just gotten a first down at the other team's 3-yard line, and they could have run up to the line and spiked the ball, or they could have called a timeout, or they could have run a play really quickly and tried to run the ball into the end zone up the middle on a quick snap, which is what I would have done. But they used their last timeout, which now means you have to just keep passing the ball. And actually, maybe it was the 1 or 2 yard line. But, to me, if the coach had time to really process it, I think they would have said, hey, run up the line, snap the ball, and let's run up the middle and call an immediate timeout. You still have 15, 14 seconds left in the game and a couple more shots. Instead, you have no timeouts left, and now, there's a little more risk to what you're doing. But anyway, so there's just some things that do certainly need to be ironed out coaching-wise and player-wise. I'm sticking by 10 wins for next year, period. Because I don't change my mind except when they go 4-0 and I predicted an 8-win season. That's when I'll change my mind.
Yeah, I remember when I first predicted 9 wins, I got a lot of slack and hate for that. But obviously, they got that 7 margin, not 9. But I have to agree with you. I predict, 10 wins. I think Miami makes, the playoffs. I mean, it's going to sound like typical Izubee, but I do think Miami can make the playoff next year with a 12-team playoff, kind of float around that, 15-12 range next year with, the guys coming back they haven't, finding that quarterback, the right quarterback for that team. I'm a big believer in Shannon Dawson. I know a lot of people are calling for his head. What are these play calls? But look, if you look at last year's team compared to this year's team, that offense looks, day and night compared to what Josh Gaddis had those guys doing. And, I do think with a second year coordinator, with, having coming back, being, in the system for a while, these guys will buy in. These guys look like they bought in a lot last year. So I do, think a lot of guys are going to step up. And I think that Miami's going to find success with Shannon Dawson. But, make sure to check out that story on 10 players that we think should or need to step up in 2024. Also, be sure to check out our 30 for 30 analysis on the top 30 players in Miami that played 30 snaps or more. Our first guy on the list is number 30, Samson Okunlola, who we saw glimpses of in the beginning of the year before he got hurt. But guy came in a 5-star prospect, one of Mario's, key guys in that 2023 recruiting class that I think is going to be a heck of a ball player at Miami when he gets healthy. So make sure to check out that update on Samson Okunlola. Also, we have a Pro Football Focus analysis Matt did after the bowl game. Matt, you kind of took a deep dive on, both sides of the ball. Just kind of, quick wrap up. What were your thoughts about, Miami's play on both sides of the ball in the Pinstripe Bowl versus Rutgers?
Not good. This was one of the worst offenses in the country. Okay. I think they were ranked 120th. I'm pretty sure 120th going into the game, 120th in total yards per game on offense. And Miami's defense, they held them down yard wise, but not points wise. And they had 114 yards by the middle part of the second quarter, which for Rutgers is like the equivalent of 1,000 yards. So it wasn't great. And then I did do a sort of a year in review on the offense and on the Miami defense, and just the grades. Look, Pro Football Focus. College coaches hate Pro Football Focus. I know for a fact Mario Cristobal thinks it's a joke. But, we don't have that many other metrics options. And so keep in mind, these Pro Football Focus people, they are former players or coaches or whatever. They know what they're doing, but what they don't know is what each player was supposed to do on a specific play call. So they're sort of assuming, and then just generalizing, he missed a block or whatever. Was he actually trying to block somebody who someone else missed? Was he coming over late because he realized that the left guard had gone the wrong way? There are certain things that Pro Football Focus is going to grade you poorly on when they don't know necessarily what your actual job was on that play. So, with that in mind, there's just too much averageness. An average grade is 70. And like when you have, people like Cam McCormick as a starter, he finished with a 41.9 overall grade. I've never seen a Miami starter with a grade that low. Period. The offensive line was really good this year, and that was probably the best unit, and the grades show that. I go through all the grades, so I'm not going to go through them all, but like the grades show that. On offense, the only real receiver that had a great grade was Restrepo. Yeah. The running backs grades were okay. Pretty good. Fletcher was 82.7 overall, which is actually great. Parrish was 77.5%, which is also really good. So they were good, and we knew that. But a lot of that is also a reflection of the offensive line, right? And the surprise here, and it's not a surprise because, we've been saying it all year, but Tyler Van Dyke, he graded out at 85.9% overall and 85.3 pass grade. So as much as fans are sick of Tyler and his turnovers, when Tyler wasn't turning the ball over, he was actually an excellent quarterback. He has an NFL arm. We all know that. He's quite accurate. And the biggest problem he had was just making some dumb decisions sometimes. But what Pro Football Focus doesn't do is they only grade from -2 to +2. So even though one of his throws should be a -1,000, it's still just a -2 at the end of the day. And when he has 10 plays that are really good and just the one stupid interception, that looks like a good grade. Whereas Miami fans will be like, he's 7 for 11 with an interception and for 68 yards. Like, that's not a good day, obviously. But this is how this stuff works. And on defense, the defense was really good across the board, especially considering no Akeem Messidor, no Nigel Kelly. I think the defensive line next season is going to be really, really good, especially because Bain and Messidor can play inside. They got a really good free agent defensive tackle from NC State. Defensive line's going to be great next year and was good considering the problems this year. Even Jared Harrison-Hunt graded out pretty well, and he's, was a backup who wound up playing a lot because of the injuries. And then linebacker Francisco Mamagoa graded out great. He'll be back. So really the question mark now is at DB, where Darryl Porter was graded out well, but he's the only guy that's a returning starter other than Damari Brown, who started at the end of the year and was pretty good. But you got to find 3 more quality defensive backs. I know they took Savion Riley. To me, he's not a free agent. I want to see 2 free agent safeties, and probably a free agent cornerback. I think they really, really need that. That could be a weakness next year if they don't address it appropriately and think what they have on board is enough. But again, there's a second portal window, which is great for the secondary because there could be some better options that come along in the second portal window, and you get a chance in the spring to see, okay, we have this or we don't have this. Because remember, after the last spring, Miami really freaked out and took, I think, 3 more cornerbacks between JUCO and the transfer portal because they realized, oh my gosh. So now we'll find out again this spring in the 15 practices where the weaknesses are, and that's why that second portal window is so important.
Yeah, no, I feel like a lot of key pieces if Miami can hit on, this team can be special next year. And kind of with the bowl game, I was really disappointed in Miami's defense. Obviously, Cam Kitchens, James Williams, Leonard Taylor, a few guys were missing, but just how Rutgers ran all over them was kind of disheartening for me to see, because we saw Miami throughout the year have a really, really good rushing defense, top 10 rushing defense country. It just seems like that first drive kind of set the tone about, how the whole game was going to go. Rutgers just kind of got to impose their will. Their front, seven's going to dominate Miami's front seven. And that was something that I was like, man, that's not a, way you want to end the season. But, a lot of guys missing. Obviously, you can't justify, their performance on that. But really want to see how they respond, next year coming off, starting big. You're starting in Gainesville on the road against the Gators, one of your biggest rivals. So it'd be really interesting to see how all that plays out. In recruiting news, last week I made my way up to Orlando for the Under Armour All-American game where 5 Miami Hurricanes are playing in that game. We have Elijah Lofton, Josiah Trader, Ryan Mack, Darius Hayes, and Booker Pickett Jr. I had the chance to really sit down with all these guys and get to know them away from football and talk some recruiting as well with those guys. We had a Darius Hayes who made that big flip from Florida on signing day, and Booker Pickett, who looked like, UCF was becoming a real option with him down the stretch leading into the early signing period. So make sure to check out those 4 Inside the Lines features with those guys. Unfortunately, Elijah Lofton was unable to make the media day, so I didn't have a chance to sit down with him. But 4 really good guys that I think can make a big impact once they get to Miami. Also, we have a story on 2024 signees that played under Rod Mack, a former linebacker that coached at the Miami Gardens Ravens. Very, very talented youth football team that produced a ton of talent. And we talked to him just about, his thoughts on Miami's 2024 class with, his son and, 4 of his former players, signing to Miami, just his overall thoughts on the program and the direction they're headed under Coach Cristobal. So make sure to check out that feature. And we have another update on a 2027 quarterback, Zack Katz, out of True North Academy that recently transferred to Chaminade. I think this kid is going to be special. As an 8th grader, he threw for 3,000 yards. And as a freshman at True North Academy, he came back and threw for, I believe, 3,800 yards, 38 touchdowns, and just 1 interception. So a guy that has immense talent and transferring into a powerhouse program like Chaminade should be a name to watch in the future. Also, we had a basketball team pick up a huge win versus North Florida, 40-point victory, and they play Clemson tomorrow as well. So we'll have you covered with all of that. And to wrap up the show, Matt, I'm going to leave you with a big question, not so big, just kind of to finish things off. 2 back-to-back top 10 classes for Miami this year. Number 6 class scored to the On3 rankings. Just, how crucial is it for Miami to continue to recruit at this level? And, just what are your thoughts on the last 2 classes and what do you kind of want to see heading into 2024 with the Hurricanes?
Well, it's interesting because at some point the numbers are going to catch up. Everyone hates when I talk about numbers, but the numbers are going to catch up. They have stacked 2 recruiting classes together, right? And if for fans who are on our website, I mean, you could look at our eligibility tracker right now. They this year, as of right now, have 38 freshmen or redshirt freshmen on the team, and they have an additional 25 sophomores or redshirt sophomores on the team. Okay, that's the backbone of the team. That's 63 players. And as you look forward, you think, okay, we got to stack another class of top talent on board. They've only got 15 seniors that'll be leaving this year. And they're over the limit right now by 88, 91, by 6 players, okay, by 6 players. So, some of these seniors may have to drop off even before next year, maybe a Campbell, a Gore. Like, I don't want to point guys out, but there's guys on that list. Cam McCormick may not even get another year to play, right? So there could be even less than those 17 senior spots. It might wind up being 13 or 14. So now what are you doing? You're cutting freshmen and sophomores from this coming up year. These are coming up year class, right? This next year, I'm saying freshmen and sophomores, not from last year. They're going to be freshmen. They're going to be sophomores. So now what are you doing? You're cutting talent to make way for younger talent. And that's my concern. At some point, you need to develop. You need to have balanced classes. You need to be taking 20 to 25 recruits a year consistently to where you're not winding up with this super young team every single year because you're running off the older guys and just keeping maybe 5 to 10 juniors and seniors you think can play and hoping the younger guys develop fairly quickly. So, people always say, oh, well, when will Miami be back? When will Miami be back? Miami will be back when they have balanced classes of top talent. And right now, all their top talent, for the most part, is really in that redshirt freshman and sophomore, the true sophomore class for the most part. And so to me, the most important part isn't, hey, the 2025 recruiting class, oh my gosh, we got to land another 30, 35, 40 top recruits. No, because you're just running off the other talent you're trying to develop. The key to me is developing the young guys to where you're only taking the 15 guys you need and you're filling those spots you need. And now you have a bunch of juniors a year. Now I'm talking a year from this coming season. So now you have a bunch of juniors, redshirt juniors, sophomores, and redshirt sophomores that are just killing it out there, while those 15 to 20 true freshmen that you just got brought on board, and maybe with another 10 redshirt freshmen that you redshirted from the year before, are developing behind them. Miami will not be back until there's development. And if you just keep on getting rid of the Collins and Chiampongs who don't develop, or the other guys who don't develop, or you don't think will develop, like you just missed them in recruiting, and now you're just getting new recruits to fill their spots. At some point, there has to be that development that's been missing for 20 years, because Gary and I would point out all the time, like, who out of these freshmen that came in have gotten significantly better from when they first played as freshmen or sophomores to their senior year? And we'd always say some of them got worse. Some of them got worse. There has to be a point where every one of them is consistently getting bigger, stronger, faster, and that translates onto the field. I don't understand how it doesn't. If you're not getting bigger, stronger, and faster, the weight room guys got to go. And we're going to know in the next, probably this coming season, whether this is going to be a success or a failure for Mario Cristobal and the staff. Because if they tank next year and have another 7-8 win season, lose a bowl game badly, everyone's leaving, not playing the bowl game, whatever. Where do you go with that? Who wants to be part of that when you have so many teams going into the playoffs and you're out of it? So to me, this coming season is so important, because if you have a really good season, you get those top 15 4- and 5-star guys in recruiting. It means winning 10 or 11 games this year means you've developed those young guys and they're contributing, because there's not enough old guys to get it done. And now you're rolling, because those guys who are going to be, sophomores and juniors in 2025, those guys are going to be back. They're not leaving, for the most part, for the NFL. Sophomores can't. And like, that's, to me, that's the key. To me, I know fans just want free agents. But at the end of the day, you've got to develop your roster. You can't take 25 free agents every year. Like, there's not enough guys out there that you're going to win the bidding war with that just want to come here over the other 100 programs, right? Other programs do exist, people, not just Miami. And B, it's going to cost a fortune every single year. That I'm not sure a lot of programs can sustain that year after year after year. So the answer is development and making sure people and players are happy and they're not going in the transfer portal after their first or second years. This is why I hate the portal, because Mario Cristobal recruits so well. But again, you say, how important is this recruiting class? Like, these recruits can leave. They can sign and leave. Every player that just signed with Miami can go right in the portal whenever they want. There's no restrictions on the portal. They can literally go in the portal right now. Any of these signees, there's no rules right now, and they can transfer. It's so stupid. Like, why are you even signing? Why even have a signing day anymore? I cannot stress enough how annoyed I am at what college football has become. There's really there's no more such thing as a student athlete. It's just a parent that wants money. I'm sorry to say it, but like that, if I had a kid who was a student athlete, I'm taking the money, bro. That's what I'm doing. And it's making Izubee. I don't know if that's a sneeze, a laugh, a sarcastic snicker. I don't know what that was. I'm going to go with sarcastic snicker because I hear a lot of that whenever I speak. But this system has to change. I don't know how it changes. I do know that the student athletes and their parents love NIL, love the transfer portal, and I also know that fans hate it, and that this is not going in a good direction for college football. So I don't know the answer. Somebody was saying, and I thought this was a good idea, that you pay players to play in bowl games. The NCAA pays the players $100,000 each, whatever, to just play in a bowl game. And some sort of penalty if they don't. Some sort of I don't know what do they call that? The carrot and the stick. I don't understand that, because I like a walking stick and I like eating carrots. They both sound like positives to me, but apparently carrot and a stick are opposites. I don't know why. Who came up with that? Is that for a horse? A horse eats a carrot, it gets hit with a stick. but we're not horses, so I don't understand it whatsoever. So I'll try to think of something else. Maybe like
That's like a Steven's tire fire, analogy. That was a classic when he said that one.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll go with a piece of cake and a missile. That makes more sense to me than a carrot and a stick. I'd rather have a piece of cake. I don't want a missile. So I'm going with that.
Yeah, no, I think Miami's doing, like you mentioned, they're acquiring top talent, just the development aspect of it, and getting these guys to come along to be big time players. But Kirby Smart said it, following the bowl. I think it was either before or after the bowl game when they killed Florida State. That was horrendous. Just want to throw that out there. That was bad. He said, winning college football is 50% recruiting, 25% talent, acquisition, 25% scouting, because you can't outcoach good players. With Georgia, you take a look at that program, what he's done over the past 5 to 6 years, top 3 classes every single year, and you see it on the field. They had their third stringers looking like a top 25 team against Florida State in that Orange Bowl, and you see what they've been doing the last 2 years, back-to-back national championships, things like that. So I love the direction Miami's program is going with these top 5 classes, top 10 classes, but now we got to see the starting to pay off with the guys developing, becoming impact athletes. So, that's something that, I hope to see. And, I think year 3 is going to be a big year. I think it's going to be the make or break year, honestly. I feel like if Miami doesn't win 9 to 10 games, finds themselves in that playoffs, a lot of people are going to be calling for Mario Cristobal to just his head and things like that. So really, really big year 2024 for Miami. So we're really interested to see how this all plays out. And, that's all that we had for you guys this morning. I hope everyone had an excellent New Year's. 2024, big years for everyone. Hope everyone thrives, prospers. And this is just me being positive as Izubee. Hope everybody wins, including the Miami Hurricanes. So for Matt Shodell, I'm Izubee Charles. Thank you all for watching. Have a great day and have a great 2024 as well.